A few days ago, I received a call from a client I had known even before we established Aus Property Strategy. She said that after receiving a first home buyer grant in Sydney, New South Wales years ago, she is now being scrutinised by the New South Wales government. Not only are they demanding all sorts of documents, but they will potentially ask her to repay the grant and impose fines. In her own words, she's frustrated, feels like crying, and powerless. This situation is a prime example, offering valuable lessons for anyone looking to buy their first home in Australia and apply for government grants, namely the First Home Owner Grant. I've outlined 10 key steps to help first home buyers avoid these investigations or debt recovery issues. Given the recent influx of inquiries from new immigrants about first-time home buying, let's break everything down and clear up all your doubts. We'll cover First Home Owner Grant in New South Wales, Victoria, Queensland, and Western Australia. Hi, I'm Alex. Welcome to Aus Property Strategy, where I share information about real estate investment, economic trends, and wealth creation. If you like this video, smash the subscribe button and turn on the notification bell to watch new weekly videos. Without further ado, let's get into it. This buyer purchased her first home after obtaining Australian permanent residency in 2019. She applied for the First Home Owner Grant in Sydney, New South Wales, receiving around $20,000, including a one-off grant and a stamp duty exemption. The requirements for the grant were straightforward: Australian PR, first home purchase, a new property, and living in the home continuously for at least 6 months within 12 months of the property's completion as the primary residence. She met all these conditions and lived on the property for 6 months within the required time frame. Returned to her home country for just a few days to sort out some family issues. However, 5 years later in 2024, she attracted the attention of Revenue New South Wales, who began scrutinising her case. Over the past 3 months, they have contacted her multiple times, requesting various documents to prove she met the First Home Owner Grant criteria. If she fails to provide sufficient evidence, she may have to return the grant and face additional fines. I was curious about how she ended up on Revenue New South Wales' radar. After investigating, I think it was because during the 6 months she lived in the property, she rented out the other room. She had hired an aggressive accountant who, for reasons unknown, declared the rental income to the tax office, possibly to claim depreciation via negative gearing and the income against her personal income tax. This may have triggered the Revenue Office to investigate the matter. Of course, it could also be a random audit. But I think the New South Wales government may have tasked its departments with raising more revenue, leading to the investigation. The logic could be that in 2024, with the New South Wales government short on funds, they assigned tasks to the First Home Buyer Department, which, upon reviewing her tax records, flagged something unusual and began their inquiry. Who knows if this only happens in cash-strapped New South Wales or even more financially struggling Victoria. Queensland and Western Australia seem to manage their finance better with less aggressive approaches. Revenue New South Wales has requested multiple rounds of evidence from her. Initially, their requests were reasonable, but they soon escalated, asking for things like food delivery receipts, electricity bills, and even checking her immigration records. Since she never ordered food delivery, she couldn't provide those receipts to prove her address. After reviewing her electricity bills, they questioned why her power usage was so low, implying she might not have lived there continuously. Her response was, "I only have a fridge which uses most of the power. Can't I save electricity?" The inquiry into her travel records stemmed from her own disclosure that she had briefly returned to her home country, prompting the Revenue Office to dig deeper. As of now, the investigation is still ongoing, with Revenue New South Wales continuing to request explanations and proof. It's become a back and forth, with more questions raised after every answer. From her own perspective, she fully met the requirements for the grant at the time, and the only possible issue is her brief return home, which technically means she didn't live there for the continuous 6 months, though this seems excusable. If the Revenue Office had a serious problem with this, they would have issued a fine already. Instead, their continuous questioning suggests they might be willing to make an exception. However, this doesn't change the fact that she's mentally and physically drained from dealing with it. On the Revenue Office's side, they may simply be following orders to raise more revenue, given the government's financial constraints. This case hasn't yet reached a conclusion. From this example, I've summarized key points that can help all first-home buyers in Australia avoid trouble. Before we begin, here's a quick disclaimer. We're only providing information, and we cannot be held responsible for any outcomes if you follow these suggestions, as we don't control government decisions. Ultimately, interpretation and enforcement rest with authorities, not with us. That said, here are the 10 points to pay attention to after applying for the First Home Owner Grant. Number 1. Update your address. Make sure to update your address with all relevant services and departments such as water, electricity, gas, internet, driver's license, mail, and bank statements as soon as you take possession of your new home. Number 2. Delivery addresses and receipts. Ensure your delivery address is updated for food deliveries and online shopping. Keep a few delivery receipts to show regular purchases. Some may say, I never order food delivery or shop online, and that's fine. But either stick with that and be ready if the Revenue Office asks for receipts, or change your habits and make a few purchases. It's your choice. Number 3. Normal electricity use. Your electricity usage should resemble that of a normal household. If your usage is too low or inconsistent, it may raise suspicions. Number 4. Travel and residency. If your travel records show that you didn't stay in Australia for a continuous 6 months within the first 12 months of owning your home, please note different states may have different requirements. You're likely to face a fine. Some may ask, can I return to my home country for 2 weeks during this period? I don't know. If the government decides it's okay, then it's fine. If they decide it's not, it's not. It's best not to take any chances. Number 5, minimize information provided. The more information you provide to the Revenue Office, the more they can scrutinize. The general rule is only give what's necessary. Sometimes playing the I don't remember card works. After all, who remembers details from so many years ago? Number 6, renting out a room. If you live in the property but rent out a room, it generally complies with the first home buyer rules. Note, requirements vary across states. However, to avoid complications, it's best to collect the rent in cash like you would with a friend, and avoid declaring this rental income in the first year for tax purposes. If you want to avoid hassle altogether, simply don't rent out any rooms. Number 7, avoid attracting attention. Once the Revenue Office starts investigating, they assume you've broken the rules and will look for evidence. The smartest approach is to avoid attracting their attention in the first place. Stay low-key and don't be too aggressive with your tax filing. Number 8, keep documentation for 5 years. It's important to play by the rules and keep all relevant documentation for at least 5 years, just in case you're audited. Number 9, don't ignore the Revenue Office. If you are investigated and you ignore the Revenue Office, they will issue fines directly. Number 10, government departments sharing information. Don't expect one government department to be unaware of information held by another. For example, the Revenue Office can access your tax records and travel history, so there's no way to hide from one by withholding information from the other. Some may ask, if I don't want to live in the house, can I still apply for the first home owner grant? That's like asking if it's illegal to evade taxes, can I still do it? It's the same concept. Aus Property Strategy has always opposed breaking the law. The rules are the rules, and they should be followed. If you try to take shortcuts, you have to bear the risk yourself. Many people who are buying their first home may not be aware of the legal requirements in each state. We've summarized the specific rules for New South Wales, Victoria, Queensland, and Western Australia, which we believe will be of great help to first home buyers. Just a disclaimer here. First, it's important to understand that both the Australian federal government and the state and territory governments have their own systems for providing subsidies to first home buyers. The federal body responsible for managing home buyer subsidies is Housing Australia and the Australian Taxation Office, while subsidies at the state and territory level are managed by the respective state revenue offices. For example, in New South Wales, it's Revenue New South Wales, and in Victoria, it's the State Revenue Office. These subsidies are generally unrelated to each other, meaning it's possible to receive them simultaneously. It's recommended to consult your solicitor to confirm this before making a purchase. Although some of the federal government subsidies may include the term first home, they are different from what we commonly understand as the first home owner grant. If you're interested, you can visit the Housing Australia website to read the policy details. What we're referring to here is the first home owner grant offered at the state government level. While the name may vary slightly between states, it typically includes a one-time grant and a stamp duty concession. Queensland offers the highest one-time first home owner grant in Australia, providing $30,000. However, there are several conditions to qualify for this grant. This grant applies only to new homes, including off-the-plan apartments, townhouses, and house land packages. In rare cases, newly constructed homes that have never been sold, where the title is still held by the developer or builder, are eligible, though such properties are extremely rare in the market. The total price of the property must be below $750,000. For house land packages with due contracts, the combined price must also be under $750,000. Another important condition is that the buyer must move into the property within 12 months of its completion and live there continuously for 6 months. This requirement may be challenging for people who frequently travel between Australia and other countries. At least one applicant must be a permanent resident, citizen, or hold a 444 visa as a New Zealand citizen. The first two categories are straightforward, but I'd like to emphasize the conditions for New Zealand citizens. In Queensland, New Zealand citizens applying for the first home owner grant must be physically in Australia at the time of signing the contract, and also at the time of settlement for off-the-plan properties or land purchases in a house and land package. As long as a New Zealand citizen is in Australia, they will hold a 444 visa. Some New Zealand citizens take advantage of this policy loophole to come to Australia specifically to buy investment properties without any intention of living here. Queensland law does stipulate that New Zealand citizens cannot come to Australia solely to receive the first home owner grant, but this rule is rarely enforced. Another condition is that neither applicant can have previously applied for a first home owner grant in any state or territory in Australia. If either partner has applied before, they're ineligible for the Queensland grant. Regardless of whether both names are on the contract, a couple can only apply for the Queensland first home buyer grant once. So when people ask, should I get married first or buy my first home first? I believe you now have the answer. The following point is also crucial. Neither applicant can have owned a principal place of residence in any Australian state or territory, including Queensland, before applying for the grant. However, owning an investment property is allowed as long as neither of them has lived in it and they continue to hold it as an investment. This allows for flexibility, as one can continue to buy investment properties and later use the first home owner grant when desired. It's also important to submit proof that the property has always been an investment, such as a rental agreement or tax statements which will show rental income. Lastly, the first home owner grant program is set to end on June 30th, 2025. After that, the program may be cancelled, extended, or changed, but we'll have to wait and see what happens. Queensland's stamp duty concession policy is quite complicated, with 3 different types of concessions. My personal suggestion is to have your solicitor check which one you qualify for. Here, I'll focus on the second type, the first home vacant land concession, which applies to buying a house and land package. Applying for the stamp duty concession can be challenging, and it doesn't fully overlap with the first home owner grant. It's possible to qualify for one, but not the other. The maximum concession you can receive is $10,675, and the condition is that the land value must be below $360,000 to receive a full stamp duty exemption. For land valued between $360,000 and $500,000, you get a partial exemption. Anyone can apply for this concession, including non-residents, though they will still have to pay the foreign stamp duty surcharge. As with other first home owner benefits, this stamp duty concession can only be used once, and it must be your first home purchase on the entire planet. Yeah, you heard that right. Queensland is known for passing laws that are difficult to enforce, and this is no exception. If I own a house in China, how could the Queensland government find out? Maybe they'll rely on fortune telling. What's even more absurd is that after the house is built, you must live in it continuously for 2 years. 2 years! They don't specify if you're allowed to travel during that time. So just for this $10,000 concession, do you really have to stay home for 2 whole years? Not many people can meet such a strict condition. Queensland's other 2 concession rules apply to different types of properties. For more details, you can check with the Queensland Revenue Office. The first home owner grant in Western Australia is quite similar to Queensland. I'll only mention the differences worth noting. For other details, you can refer to the picture on the screen or the relevant WA websites. First, there's no specified end date for Perth first home owner grant. Second, when it comes to the rule about whether you've owned a property before, the regulations are very detailed. In short, if you've owned a principal residence in Australia before applying, you may not be eligible, but you can own as many investment properties as you like without any issue. The stamp duty concession in WA is straightforward as well. It applies to all property owners, and most of the eligibility criteria are the same as for the first home owner grant. You can refer to the picture on the screen for more details. Melbourne's first home owner grant follows the same basic principles as Queensland and WA. The key difference is that within 12 months of the home being completed, one applicant must live in the property for a continuous 12 months, not just 6 months. Also, the Victorian government is particularly strict about collecting evidence, with a very long checklist. You can visit the State Revenue Office Victoria website for more details. Victoria's stamp duty reduction policy for first home owner is the most complex in Australia. I'll skip what's similar to other states and focus on the concept of dutiable value. If the dutiable value of a property is under $600,000, stamp duty is fully exempt. If it's between $600,000 and $750,000, part of the stamp duty is exempt. However, understanding the definition of dutiable value requires some study. I haven't seen a proper explanation online for this yet. For second-hand properties, the dutiable value is simply the contract price, This part is straightforward. For due contract house and land packages, the dutiable value is the land contract price, which is also clear. The real difference lies in off-the-plan apartments, off-the-plan townhouses, and single contract house and land packages. In these cases, the dutiable value equals the contract price minus the construction costs incurred after the contract was signed. There are only a few situations where this calculation method applies. Number one, if the purchase qualifies for the principal place of residence concession, which doesn't necessarily have to be the first home, it can be for a second property as well. Or number two, if it qualifies for the first home buyer duty exemption, concession, or reduction, which is exclusive for first home buyers. Here's an example. A first home buyer purchases an off-the-plan apartment with a contract price of $620,000, signing the contract before construction begins. 6 months before the building is completed, the developer informs the buyer solicitor that $465,000 was spent on construction after the contract was signed. So the dutiable value of the property becomes $620,000 minus $465,000 equals $155,000. Since the dutiable value is below $600,000, no stamp duty is paid. Now let's change the scenario. If the contract was signed when the building was 50% complete, the construction costs incurred after the contract would be $465,000 divided by 2 equals $232,500. The dutiable value would then be $620,000 minus $232,500 equals $387,500. If the property was fully bought before the contract was signed, the dutiable value would simply be the contract price. There are 10 examples of different situations on Victorian State Revenue Office website. I really don't understand why things need to be this complicated. It seems that WA's policies are the most straightforward. New South Wales' current first home owner grant is simple but not very useful. The requirement is that the total property price must be under $600,000, or for due contract house and land packages, the combined price must be under $750,000. These are the prices that are practically impossible to find. Well, unless you are looking at a one-bedroom apartment on the outskirts of the city, it's unlikely to qualify. For other types of properties, don't even bother. It's also worth noting that if you sign the contract before July 1st, 2023, you need to live in the property continuously for 6 months within 12 months of the property's completion. If the contract was signed after this date, you need to live there continuously for 12 months. What's notable about New South Wales stamp duty reduction for first-home buyers is that the price cap is relatively high. Discounts apply to properties under $1 million. So while standalone houses or house and land packages might be out of reach, there are still plenty of options for apartments. There are still quite a few two-bedroom apartments around $800,000 range. To qualify, you must begin living in a property for a continuous 12-month period within 12 months of its completion or settlement. There you have it. If you've made this far, please give me a thumbs up, subscribe, and share this with your friends. Turn on the notification bell to watch new weekly videos, and have a good one. Bye.